We've got the 90-Day Hunt for Love Tell-All Part 1. It's episode 14 of the 90-Day Hunt for Love season, and I thought we were going to have a one-part tell-all and be all done with 90 days, but I will tell you guys now, there is another episode. I think it's just a two-part tell-all. I can't imagine us needing any more than two parts, but I'll tell you about part one. It was actually quite interesting, and there was a lot to uncover and unwrap. So let's jump right on in. Cortney and Colt are still together. They have had a few struggles. She did stay with him in Tulum for a little while and then moved him back to her house in Florida. So that did not go over well for Usman, who really kind of gave him a hard time and made him feel pretty bad about it. But Cortney did not seem ruffled one way or the other. And their struggles emotionally were due to the fact that Colt was talking to someone from Brazil, apparently, before he went to the Hunt for Love. And he was going to meet her after he filmed the show. And so there was a little bit of contact, and Cortney did not want him talking to any other woman while living at her house, which is perfectly understandable. And so she tells us that he has made an effort. He changed his phone number and he got rid of all of the other contacts so that there would be no temptation to disrespect her. And then they're having some physical issues. Apparently they are intimate, but he is having some performance issues post-surgery because of the great amount of medication and painkillers and muscle relaxants and all the other things that he's on. So as of the time of the filming of the tell-all, they still had not gone all the way, for lack of a nicer way to put that. But apparently they are creative and are exploring their intimacy in other ways. Cortney tells the group and us that she's a little concerned that maybe he's not very attracted to her. So we'll find out how this plays off and if it becomes an issue later on down the road or in episode 2 of the tell-all. But so far they're still together, so I guess that says something. And then Tim confronts Usman because Usman's been acting like a bloody idiot on social media, apparently. He got mad because Tim blocked him. Tim tells us that he didn't block him. He unfollowed him because he was cleaning up his social media so that he wouldn't overcrowd his feed with people who he rarely interacted with, and he'd be able to see, the posts of his friends and family a little easier. Well, Usman did not take well to this and went on a mission to, I don't know why, talk all kinds of nonsense about Usman about Tim, and just kind of be unreasonable about it. I just don't understand this guy. And then Veronica, Tim's best friend, ex-girlfriend, all the things, joins the group, and they address Jennifer's talking about Tim's being gay. Tim is so frustrated. He cannot contain himself as he's trying to explain to Jennifer that it's been 6 years of this and it's not necessary anymore, and he would just like to be left alone. He goes on to tell her, I don't think you realize how much this has affected my life. And she just kind of snickers, but then he elaborates and he says, this is, my parents have seen this, my family has seen this, and everybody is pretty upset by it. I personally don't give a shit, he says, but it's upsetting everybody else. And I don't understand why you continue to perpetuate this lie. And Veronica kind of chimes in and calls her a bitch. Jennifer, eventually they agree that they are going to bury the hatchet and they're not going to, continue to fight. And it seems like it may not hold for very long, but both sides agree. So I'm going to hold out hope that that is indeed what happens, because I'm kind of tired about this, of this banter back and forth and this storyline. And I agree with Veronica. Veronica said, you guys put so much energy into this that it's hard to believe that you don't care for each other. Because I think I said that in a previous episode, like, thou protest too much. Let it go. Well, apparently they're going to let it go. Elise and Carlo, they left together. And Elise tells us that she broke up with him after about a month and a half after the show wrapped. She says she broke up with him for a variety of reasons, not limited to the distance between them and the fact that he was very controlling. So that ended up not working out, and we will cover a little bit more about that as we work our way through the tell-all. But Elise and Tiffany apparently have commiserated. So what happened was they were all together in New York, and they were there for filming Between the Sheets. And apparently Tiffany and Elise spent a good amount of time commiserating over Carlo and everything that had happened. And they exchanged phones, and they were able to read each other's texts from Carlo and to Carlo. And they both discovered that there were some really scathing texts. He had nothing good to say to Elise about Tiffany, and nothing good to say to Tiffany about Elise. And it just really made the two of them kind of bond together and agree to have each other's backs. So, Tiffany and Elise are not in a good and happy place with Carlo. And when he walks on, you could tell that he knows that he has done fucked up. He walks in and sits next to Cole, who apparently, they were really good friends. We saw that during the season, that they were pretty tight. And it turns out that Cole actually turns on Carlo as well, because he discovered that, guess what? Carlo had been sending disparaging messages about him to other people in the group as well. And I think it was Elise showed them to him. So then he turns around to Carlo and says, I've always had your back, and I did, now I'm going to give you a reason to talk shit. You always want to talk shit about people. And goes on to confirm Elise and Tiffany's suspicions that he did, in fact, used to call Tiffany fat, and that he used to call Elise stupid and dumb. And they go on to show the receipts. So at one point, Cole is furious. He says he's shaking and he wants to punch Carlo in the face. So Carlo's not having a good day at this tell-all. And lucky for him, he doesn't have to stay on there very long. I did not like this. I thought that there was no reason why the host shouldn't have and didn't press him harder. He caused a lot of nonsense, and I feel like she just let him off easy. I was really disappointed with how quickly she let him off. But it is what it is. Then Jeniffer and Tim, they did bury the hatchet, but he had to show proof that he had sent her money. She blatantly lies and says that he never sent her any money, and kind of goes on to, intimate that he didn't have any money to send her. So this is just the tell-all where everybody is ordering up their phones from the producers, and Tim is no exception. He asked for his phone to be brought so he could show receipts of all of the money that he sent her over the course of like 9 months. And although it is in Colombian money, Tiffany is able to confirm that there were 15 transactions. So Tim maintains that even though he didn't go around calling her all kinds of names, he did, in fact, when asked, say disparaging things about her, because he felt that the second he wasn't able to send her money, or he stopped sending her money, that was why she broke up with him. So he felt that she was a money hungry whore. And when asked, that is what he said. I don't know how I feel about the harsh language, but listen, if I had been, run through the ringer on social media and on every TLC episode that my ex had appeared on, I think that I might have very little tolerance for how I speak to someone as well. So maybe she'll just stop talking about him altogether and we can all move on. Well, it was the most awkward thing ever, but apparently Tim and Elise are going on a date after the tell-all. Veronica explains to Tim that it's been 15 years since they dated, and she can tell that he still does not see when someone is trying to flirt with him. She's referring to Elise and the fact that Elise was kind of being flirty during filming, and Tim just didn't pick up on it. So she legitimately goes through almost like a vow where, you say something, then they repeat it. The script, for lack of a better explanation, to Tim on how to ask Elise out in the moment. And so he does word for word repeat what Veronica says, and she gets him a date with Elise, who she later tells us, Veronica, that she knows is way out of his league, and then goes on to tell Elise, who they chat a little after during the break, that she just needs to kind of be the person that takes the bull by the horns with Tim, because he just does not pick up on the cues. However, once he becomes comfortable, he's very sweet. He'll plan amazing things, and he's a really good guy. Well, Elise just wants to make sure that Veronica had sex with Tim, because she had never heard of Tim having sex with a woman, or anybody for that matter. And Veronica assures Elise that it had been many years, but she and Tim had a lot of sex. We'll hear about another broken penis, which I don't know if that's the running thing with, these shows these days. This is TLC, so it's not Housewives, but we talked about Gretchen having broken Slade's penis over in Orange County. And apparently, Tim tells the group, when he thinks that they had broken for a commercial, that back in the day, Veronica broke his penis too. He's doing it for purposes of trying to make Colt feel better about the fact that he is struggling with some dysfunction given his recent surgery and all the medications. But nonetheless, he explains that for 9 months, he was afraid to have sex because she had broken his penis and it almost caused them to break up. So probably something we did not need to know about Tim, but if I know it, you need to know it. So there you have it, guys. And then we hear about Jen and Cole talking about their sexual connection. And I will stand by the fact that TLC is a lot spicier than Bravo and Peacock, but Cole is very full of himself, very happy with himself in this moment, and he points out that once Jen went to him, she never went back to Rob. And Jeniffer says, "Don't go there," when he says that. So I kind of wonder what that's all about. And then they quickly say, "Okay, let's move on. Next question." And that was another missed opportunity for this host. Was her name Suki? It was the first time she hosted. I thought she did honestly, any fan, no offense to you, dear, I don't know what else you do. I just think that any really good fan could have done probably a more thorough job. And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt because I know that you guys are produced and there's somebody in your ear. But I just feel like you left a lot of opportunities to, either shore things up or close things down kind of on the table. And in particular, I don't know if it comes up in part 2, but listen, at this point, that was a perfect opening to find out exactly what happened between Rob and Jeniffer. But no, alas, Jeniffer is getting the good edit again, at least until next week. But Jeniffer does accuse Tiffany and Tim of being the people who are stirring all the shit and spreading all the gossip. And that's what she uses to detract and get away from the conversation that she didn't want to have about how many times she may or may not have been in Rob's room. So we have Tell All Part 2 coming next week. I will be here to tell you all about it. I honestly think that this hunt for love is kind of the way to go. I think it's one of my favorite TLC 90-day spinoffs. I think that there is a lot of places we can go with this. There are a lot of 90-day people out there in the universe of 90 days that are still single and that can be thrown together for another season or two. A lot of people think we should just leave it alone. It was a good season. Let's just leave it where it is. I don't know that I'm of that mind, because I think that there's a lot to uncover with this. And I think that sometimes the 90-day franchise itself is pretty boring and looks very curated, and I don't really find myself believing it. So this one was a breath of fresh air. I'll be back next week to tell you about episode 2 of the tell-all, and I'll be crossing my fingers that there's not a part 3. So, Real Housewives of Orange County. Well, it seems that we were left on a big cliffhanger. You'll remember Tamra stormed off away from the group. They were accusing her of being sloshed and maybe on some sort of medication in addition to over drinking. And in the aftermath of Tamra's quitting the show, the girls are trying to make sense of what happened. So the show opens and, they're all chatting with their husbands and kind of telling them what was going on. And then Emily goes to Shannon's room and they talk about it too. Listen, everyone, including Heather, is furious with Tamra for just walking off of the show. They don't understand why she gets to just walk off where everybody else, is expected to stay there and resolve conflict. But Heather thinks, especially because she had her back, that she owed her at least a text. And apparently Tamra had not even yet sent a text back telling her that she was okay or acknowledging anything. So let's get into this episode. And I think that a cool way of doing this week will be to cover it by person. So let's talk Shannon. Shannon is 20 minutes late to the boat and then spends 5 minutes asking for things. She puts her eyelashes on the way. She seems highly frazzled and hairy. And then she finally gets there when they're just about to leave and is asking for production to give her coat. And if any of the girls have sunscreen, the girls seem very, very perturbed. But then she also says that she's been having anxiety attacks since her DUI. And so maybe that is the reason for some of her behavior this season. And at one point during this episode, we see Shannon try to FaceTime Sophie, who, by the way, is living her best life. And I think trying to get on Mama's very last nerve by totally ignoring everything she's saying. She's in a nightclub. She says she can't hear her. Shannon's trying to scream over the music and telling Sophie she needs to go outside. And I think that the news or the rumors about Sophie, sorry, I lost her name in my mind for a second, getting a spot on Next Gen might actually be a little more than rumor, because we are seeing an awful lot of her and her New York life this season on Orange County. Let's move on to Gina. I honestly think that Gina is having an amazing season. There are both camps when it comes to Gina. Some people think that she's just been too much. Other people think that she's really using Katie to kind of stand on her shoulders and shine this season. I'm just going to tell you what's going on and leave all of the deciding who you like and don't like to you for this one. But I would say that Gina, during the alligator boat scene, is transferring her water anxiety and alligator anxiety onto Shannon. And I am proud of her for having faced her fears. But that scene before the boat takes off, she's talking a mile a minute. You can see that she's frustrated with Shannon, but that's not really what is going on. And it's pretty apparent. And then later on, when they go to the Bourbon House and she's almost choking, oh my gosh, can you imagine? She said it herself. And honestly, I couldn't agree with you more. Gina, what a terrible way to die, listening to Emily and Heather have an argument while you choke right there within touching distance of them and they don't notice. The funniest part about this to me was the fact that they could clearly hear and see what was going on. But either they're so trained at this point or they thought it would make for a better scene. They do not. Heather and Emily do not stop arguing in order to possibly save Gina. So good thing that you were able to save yourself, honey, because there was no coming back from that if you did not. And then later on, she tells the table, she had told half of the girls in the van, but later on she tells the entire group at dinner that she called the journalist that is in question here with the whole Kiki Monique thing, and he confirmed Tamra's side of the story is true. So she thinks that maybe Gretchen did say something because she's not listening to reasonable explanations of what's going on and instead wants to keep shutting it down. So she doesn't understand and thinks, well, maybe there's a little bit more to this. And she tells Gretchen that right to her face. And then let's talk about Heather. Listen, I agree with Heather. I thought that last week she was a really good friend to Tamra. And Tamra had absolutely no cause to talk to her like that when she ran off after her after the big walkout. But Heather's honest and says, I do not like being on the water. And honestly, Miss Dubrow doesn't do murky water in an alligator boat. Only yachts in Saint-Tropez. Come on, you guys. Get it together, Bravo. At dinner, she does not want to be made fun of by Emily. And that's what the whole argument is about while Gina's choking. Apparently, she has taken exception with the fact that Emily keeps picking on her. But Emily thinks that, Heather's doing the same thing. And so they kind of are both talking over one another. But we'll see. That one didn't get too far out of hand. And then Heather explains at dinner after Gina started talking about the fact that she had contacted the journalist that everyone is scared. She's like, Katie, we're all afraid of what you're going to do next. And honestly, I don't disagree with her. How could you trust somebody who is just a loose cannon like that? And I mean, that's if you believe it, of course. So we're finally done in New Orleans, and we start to hear the talks after they return back to Orange County. And we see that Katie and Matt are talking about an incident that occurred at Mastro's. So we start to get a little bit of clarity as to where Katie got her alleged information from. She tells us that one Saturday night, she and Matt, Gretchen and Slade, and Jeniffer and Ryan had gone to dinner at Mastro's, and it was Gretchen who told both of them that she had gone to the hospital because she felt so terrible after having been allegedly roofied. She goes on to say during this conversation with Matt that Gretchen said that she went to the hospital, got lab results, and had tested positive for drugs in her system. So now the plot thickens even more, and this girl is, expanding upon her story. And her husband simply says, "You're not lying." So I don't know what's going on. It's starting to make a lot more sense why we need a lie detector test. But then there's going to be a meeting with Heather and Tamra, right? Heather goes to meet Tamra because guess what, you guys? She didn't quit the show. They meet at OSPI or OSPI in Costa Mesa. And this is an Italian food pizzeria. And it looks pretty cool. There's a happy hour at the bar in the patio. They do a tableside martini that looks pretty neat. And the food looks reasonably priced, and it looks like a cool little environment. But after the conversation, I just find myself asking, are you Team Heather or Team Tamra? In other words, do you think that Heather is right and that Tamra shouldn't have to be worrying about her feelings? Or do you think that Tamra is right and Heather should be more sensitive to what Tamra is going through right now? I'm just curious because I honestly believe that both sides of these girls' feelings are very much valid. I think that Tamra should have, if in fact Heather sent her a text, Tamra should have taken the time to send her a text. Heather says, if you could be all over the air podcasting, why couldn't you have taken a minute to text me back? And Tamra maintains, I didn't realize that I was supposed to be worried about what you want. I'm going through a lot of shit. So again, both sides valid. It just depends, I guess, which way you want to look at it. But the fun part was the break in the tension when they both kind of said, I don't know, or Tamra said, serious question, what looks better, this tiramisu or that waiter? And thank goodness we needed a break in the tension. And I don't need to see Tamra in another disagreement with another person on the show. So let's talk about Emily. Emily. I am honestly struggling so much with Emily this season. I've been very open about the fact that she's always been, if not my favorite, certainly in my top 5 favorite of the housewives. And I don't want that to ever change, but I don't know if I will be able to keep her in that top 5 if she keeps doing some of the things she's doing. Listen, on the one hand, my heart is just bleeding for her, given what she's going through with her son and how it's affecting her marriage. I can clearly see that there's a very real dynamic that has shifted in that household. On the other hand, I could do without all of the crazy Emily antics anymore. I don't know if it's because, okay, here's my theory. I feel like she is doing that because her life is so serious right now that she distracts herself by doing things that she thinks will provide shock value and therefore take her out of her moment of darkness and give her a chuckle. The bad part is it's not really landing. So some of these things that she's doing are actually cheapening her profile, in my opinion. I'll leave it there and I'll just go on and tell you what happens with Emily this episode. So she clearly loves an adventure, and when all the other girls are freaking out at the alligator airboat adventure, she wants them to go faster. And it's she who is very frustrated when Shannon is late. She, like Stephanie over in Miami, does not like tardiness, and I don't disagree. That's one of my pet peeves as well. But they show a scene with Gina and Emily sitting on the bed, and Emily is FaceTiming Shane primarily to find out what happened at a doctor's appointment, and Shane is being Shane and kind of trying to make a joke that he doesn't, know what she's talking about or whatever. But honest to goodness, the relationship just seems really strained. They seem to be making a very common marital mistake, not communicating clearly. After the kids leave for an outing, she and Shane discuss Luke, and we get to see a little bit of this dynamic that I'm talking about between her and Shane. She is frustrated, she feels helpless, she feels sad, and she just loses it. She really has this breakdown where she's doing the ugly cry. She's covering her face. If you look close enough, there's some drool coming out of her mouth and nose. It's a real honest, emotional, raw moment. And we get to hear from the confessionals that all she wants is, to be told that everything's going to be okay and that he's there for her and maybe a hug. And Shane's frustrated because he doesn't understand why she doesn't think that he's taking it seriously or that he's worried just because he is not handling it the way she does. And, if you watch the interaction between Shane and Luke, he really does have a whole different approach. And he kind of makes light of the whole situation, which I think kind of deflates Luke's ability to kind of attention grab. And I don't disagree with Shane that, Emily's behavior may or may not be contributing to some of the regression that they were discussing during this scene. And then Shane finally loses his patience, and he, first he tells us that he doesn't know if he's right or wrong in this, but he does treat his girls and boys differently. A lot of parents do that. I can't speak to that. I only had boys, so I didn't have to figure that out. But I will say I parented my kids differently because every child's different. So I could see where you would do girls and boys differently unless you just had really hard and fast gender roles that you were trying to instill, in which case I don't really know how I feel about that. But, most people do parent their children differently. And Emily just tells us she needs a deeper connection and that she doesn't get that from Shane and that he is not very nurturing. And that's really what Emily is craving from Shane. So I hope these two are able to figure out their communication style a little bit. It's very reminiscent of first year Emily and Shane. They are clearly having some sort of a breakdown. And again, it's hard for me because I really love Emily. And seeing Shane in confessionals is everything to me. I know that there's some controversy about husbands doing confessionals, but I would make an exception for Shane Simpson because he is hands down my favorite house husband. And I've met him a few times and he's been very cool. I really enjoyed talking to him, and he has a really cool vibe and lets off a really nice aura. So how he comes across on television, folks, I'll tell you firsthand, is not the way he comes across in person. And so I just hope these two are able to work it out. But we see a scene where the girls, Emily, Gretchen, and Jeniffer, head off to a tavern to have some drinks. This is the Goat Hill Tavern in Costa Mesa. It's a dive bar, and I really mean that in every sense of the word. It actually did win like Dive Bar of the Year. So there's no food served, not much to look at here. But Emily does immediately offend the bartender, and thinking she's going to be funny, she said, I hear you make a really terrible espresso martini, so I'll take one of those. And it falls flat, and that's not a surprise. Pretty much all of her shenanigans have been falling flat this season. But she takes the time to explain about the troubles that she and Shane are going through with regards to how to maneuver through what is going on with Luke. And so, yet again, before I go away from Emily, I just want to give her kudos because she is catching a lot of heat for having shared this story. And I think that there is something to be said about the amount of strength and the amount of courage it takes to be able to come out with this in a public forum. And I get that some of the controversy is surrounding the fact that Luke is a child and he doesn't get to have a vote on how he's exposed. But I would urge you to reserve judgment and instead lean into the fact that this storyline has really exposed thousands and thousands of wives and moms to symptoms and things that they may or may not have witnessed and not known what to do with, or not known that it was an issue. So let's give her a little bit of a break when it comes to shaming her for sharing this as her storyline. And let's move on to Gretchen. Okay, I'm really struggling because damn it, I really want to like Gretchen. I think she's amazing for TV. I don't think we'll see her go anywhere anytime soon. But I do think that she is struggling. She's really struggling to believe that Katie said anything to anybody else. She really wants to believe her friend. She's really struggling to believe that Tamra has changed at all and that it's not Tamra who is causing all the drama. And then she starts to backpedal when it comes to what's going on with Tamra. At first, she told the girls in the van back in New Orleans, she told Tamra that she felt really, really terrible and she had gone to the emergency room or the clinic or the urgent care or whatever the hell it is. And then she backtracked and says in a different place in the same episode that she never did, that she should have, but that she never did. Oh, I know when she said that. During that confessional where she's wearing the pink suit with the wig with the pearl headband in it. What in the Stepford Wives is going on there? I know that Gretchen marches to her own drummer when it comes to style, but sometimes you guys need to tell her when she's gone too far, hair and makeup people. Come on, glam team, help a sister out. That was not the look for Gretchen. It aged her. It made her look plastic. It made the wig look very wiggy. And I just didn't like it. Point blank, period. But yeah, that look totally distracted me. But let's move ahead to the tavern. Emily confirms that Gretchen thinks she's being naive when it comes to Katie. And Emily agrees. Yeah, you're being naive when it comes to Katie. And so she's wondering why Katie didn't follow up with Kiki. And so is everybody else. Let's move on to Katie. Speaking of the devil, Katie insists she did not say anything to Kiki. Well, let me rephrase. Katie insists she did not say that to Kiki. But then we hear about the Mastros with Jen and Katie and the husbands. But she said she had only really gotten sick. And then she tells us that she and both Matt heard the same story. And so it's hard to know why Jen is not taking her side or admitting that she heard the same things. And she doesn't understand why she's the only one with her feet being held to the fire. So, they sit down and they talk. Matt makes her that martini. And then she tells the producers that she's being used as a pawn because both girls were there and she is not lying. Well, we're going to find out sooner or later. Jeniffer wants Katie to call Kiki. And she does the old Katie shuffle. She's mad that Katie isn't owning all of what happened. And she says as much when they're at the tavern later on with Emily. She doesn't understand why, she just doesn't get it. But Jeniffer is not speaking up either. And Gretchen is not saying anything different to Emily in this moment. So I'm starting to think that there is some sort of a conspiracy. And I bet you we are going to uncover it. Let's talk about Tamra. How is it that she just quit the show, but the very next episode, we are at a therapy session with her? My opinion, because the show needs her, you guys. But let's talk a little bit about the therapy session. She admits that to her therapist that she's never felt good enough and that she's afraid to open up from fear of being abandoned. She says, her dad left when she was little, and then the issue with her daughter. She struggles from abandonment, and so she'd rather just not open up than to make herself vulnerable and then be left. And honestly, you guys, I could relate to that. Sometimes it's easier to keep a wall up because it's hard to see who people really are. And sometimes people show you certain sides of themselves and it takes a while for them to reveal themselves completely to you. So it's understandable that you would want to be guarded, especially if you have had a history of dealing with these issues. I honestly don't blame Tamra, but I know that she has mishandled some of these situations terribly. And she does admit that she took a half a Xanax before dinner and she mixed it with alcohol. So we already knew that from social media. Right after the episode aired last week, she went online and said as much, just putting the end to any speculation or any drama that might result from that. And she didn't make any apologies for it, which I think is great because she shouldn't have apologized for her choices. As far as, deciding to do what she did. Was it smart? No. Was it healthy? No. Did it do what she intended it to do? Mm-mm. But she gets the right to make her own decisions. I think it's interesting. They could not go one episode without Tamra. What does that really tell you guys? So at OSPI or OSP or whatever, Tamra tells Heather that Gretchen said she went to the hospital in the van, but then changed her mind. And so, see, that's what I mean. It's not really clear if Gretchen might be the culprit in this situation. And so we'll see what happens because that's where everything ends. But we see previews, and next week, the podcaster that has infiltrated the housewives and made breaking the fourth wall a normal occurrence in 2025 housewives culture will be showing up. That's right. On the previews, we saw that Kiki Monique shows up to have lunch with Gretchen, and she's going to clear the air. We also see tidbits of the lie detector tests, but it's hard to tell whether or not that will actually air next week. And then Daddy Gene, the dancing machine, Shannon's dad, turns 96. So Shannon will celebrate him as part of expanding her storyline, and I'll be there to tell you about it. I am still really digging this season of The Housewives. I didn't start off liking it. I think I was struggling with, I don't know what it was. I just think I was too immersed in some of the other episodes to be able to really sit back and enjoy what this franchise was feeding me. But I have since seen the light and I am back on the Orange County train. I will be here to cover that for you next week. And I will also be back to cover the Real Housewives of Miami episodes 11 and 12. Now, for those of you who do not know, Miami moved from Tuesdays to Thursdays. So last week we got 2 episodes, and that's why we will have 2 to cover for you. We'll do it in a little short burst a podcast episode coming up here real soon. And then this weekend, we will be completing our summer series with a Labor Day extravaganza in which we will cover what remains of our locations that we visited while on our European vacation. That includes the Amalfi Coast, Sorrento and Capri, Rome, and of course, Vatican City. So if you are not doing anything this weekend, you can spend your weekend with the Living on the Verge podcast. There'll be an episode released on Friday. There'll be another on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And that'll wrap up the summer series. So I hope you'll take a little bit of time to spend some of your holiday weekend with us at the Living on the Verge podcast. I have some excellent interviews coming up and a lot more to cover as usual. I'll be back very soon. Until then, I'll be here living on the verge. Have a good day.